What's up, guys? I'm Tomo. I put the call out there for people to share stories about the worst financial decisions they've ever made that I can make a video about and share with you all, with the idea that this will be a learning and education experience for everyone. Today, we're going to be talking about Sarah's story. Now, I've changed the name, obviously. So, we're going to talk through Sarah's story. I'm going to give you some key financial analysis and financial tips along the way. And then at the end of the story, we'll share with you Sarah's key takeaway from the whole experience, which I actually agree with. Now, I do want to make it clear from the outset, this video is not in the purpose of looking down on Sarah or trying to pass judgment on Sarah or anything like that. I know sometimes things are difficult, especially when you're paying medical bills and you're looking after loved ones. So there's no judgment at all in this video. The purpose of this video will be to share her experiences with others, to help others perhaps not make the same mistakes that Sarah has made. So that's the whole vibe, that's the whole context behind this video. Quick disclaimer, I'm not a licensed financial advisor. This video is for education and entertainment purposes only. This is Sarah's story. Hey Tomo, worst financial decision we ever made was to sell our house in our hometown. Let's call that Town A, because our son required prolonged and serious medical treatment that was only available in Town B. This is very common in the country. And so they wanted to live in Town B to be close to their son's medical treatment. We did not profit very much from the sale of the house. Finances were tight. They were very busy, so they were nervous about keeping their house in Town A and renting that out in the case that you have issues with tenants that don't pay their rent, that needs repairs, those kinds of costs, as well as paying rent in Town B. We did not profit much on the sale of the house. With those proceeds, we paid out our car loan from the sale, and we thought we'd have enough money left over to buy a new house in Town B closer to the medical treatment. This was a time when the housing market went crazy, and now we are still stuck in the rent cycle. My husband is 52, I'm 43, and we are no longer eligible for first home buyer assistance programs. This was our largest financial mistake. Now again, I have empathy for their situation. They're trying to do the best thing for their son that needs serious medical treatment. But having said that, let's take a look at some of the financial aspects of this story. Now, let's first talk about the house in very general concepts. So there is a school of thought that your own personal home is not actually an asset because it doesn't produce you any money. It's a liability you have to pay to the bank.
So that's why your house is not an asset, is because it's taking money from your pocket. So very simply said, assets put money in my pocket, liabilities take money from my pocket.
I've done a few videos on this, which I'll share in the description. I sort of agree with that analysis, but I'm not going to talk about that for the purpose of this video. For this video, let's just focus on the house because it's very important for Australians culturally to own our own homes. So the good thing about a house is that a house is an asset or can be an asset, is that you only need a small sum of money to buy the full asset. It's called a leveraged buy. So you normally need a 20% deposit to buy a house, and you buy 100% of the value of the house. So that's really good because if you go to the grocery store, you can't buy 20% of the groceries and then promise to pay the rest later. You need to pay 100% up front. So initially, you can buy this asset, a house, with a smaller sum of money than what the asset costs. So that's one of the positive things about owning a house. The second point about why this asset can be good is that an asset appreciates in value. That means goes up in price. So take a look at Australian housing prices for the last 100 years. There's been some periods of stagnation, but they have generally gone up in price. So that's really good. You've bought an asset for only 20% of the cost, and it's gone up in price over a long period of time. That's the definition of an asset, more or less. Another positive about owning this asset is that once you build up enough equity in this asset, meaning once you own a certain percentage of it, you've paid down your loan and you have some real ownership in that asset, you can, if you want to, borrow against it and use those funds to buy other income producing assets. So what was a single asset initially can be used to borrow against to buy other assets that produce income. And that's generally a good wealth growth story. So owning an Australian home can have its positives. You don't need 100% of the funds to buy it up front. You only need a small portion. It generally goes up in value, and you can use that asset to fund other income producing assets. Now, for many Australians, the purchase of the family home will be the biggest purchase of their lives. So once you decide to sell that asset, you now have a nest egg. Some nest eggs will be really big if the housing prices have increased a lot, or you have a lot of equity built up in the house, or some nest eggs might be smaller. But whatever the size of that nest egg, it's important to spend it wisely. Now, I don't know the exact particulars of how big or small this nest egg was, but clearing out some debts, not necessarily a bad thing, especially if you're closer to retirement. Gives you that feeling of release that you've paid off all your liabilities, you pay off your debts, you're debt free. So I understand the emotional drivers to want to do that. But if we talk in general concepts, we've now got a positive nest egg that was used for an asset that was increasing in value. And the portion of that was used to pay off some car loans. Now, cars are possibly the worst assets you can own. I drive a beat up old Mazda 3. Okay. But the reason that they're the worst assets you can own is because the minute you drive it off the lot, it depreciates in value. So, opposite to the household where you've loaned a sum of money, you've bought the asset and it's going to increase in value. With a car loan, you're going to borrow a sum of money, you're going to buy an asset that decreases in value. Now, the only good thing cars do are getting you from work, help from your income producing activities. They do have some utility in that regard. But in terms of an asset, it's quite poor. Now, one thing that's really important to think about is once you have a good nest egg, which is a nest egg from a good asset, which was increasing or appreciating in value, try and put that nest egg into other assets that will also increase in value or pay you an income stream, rather than paying off what I call poorer assets that will decrease in value. And some examples of assets that generally increase in value are your house or properties, into your superannuation, bonds, shares, those sorts of things. But let's just say for this example that there was enough of a nest egg left over after paying off the houses for a deposit for a new house. It's no secret that we are in an Australian housing crisis at the moment. And it wasn't something that happened overnight. This was 20 years in the making. And this is simply because the building of houses has not kept up with population growth. As well as NIMBYism, not in my backyard, state governments and local governments are not building high rises, which can house lots of people because people don't want them in their suburbs. So no one could have really seen this coming. Well, maybe the experts could have seen this coming, but poor Sarah, not blaming her for not seeing this coming. I don't think many people saw this housing crisis coming. My hope is that they have enough of a nest egg left over. Then if they choose to want to buy a house again, that they can do that, or they can use that nest egg for other income producing assets. And so Sarah's key takeaway or key learning from this story, which I really agree with, is before any big financial decision, for any big life-changing decision, make sure you go and seek professional advice, professional assistance before you make that decision. Because worst case, they can outline all the risks associated with what you're going to go through, and then it can help you make a more informed decision. So it's a really unfortunate situation for Sarah. I sincerely wish their family well, and I hope they do. I hope they are well. But for any big life-changing decision, especially around your finances, make sure you go and seek some financial assistance. If there was anything in Sarah's story that resonates with you and you feel comfortable, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, head across to my Facebook page or my Instagram page if you're happy to share your stories with me, and I'll make a video on it, and we can take from your situation learnings that can help others along their financial journey. Stay safe. Take care, guys. I'll see you in the next video.